Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to another YouTube video on the Empty Betters YouTube page. Appreciate y'all coming in and listening. Before we get started, like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. Today we will be talking about the best fantasy hockey waiver wire pickups on the market. Some of these guys might already be taken. If you're lucky enough where they aren't, I highly suggest you snag. We're going to do a little snake draft formation here. So Nick, let you start.
Sure. I think first guy I gotta go with probably not necessarily a waiver wire pickup, but definitely a guy you want to look out for in your draft. Definitely a sleeper there for sure is going to be Joel Eriksson Ek of the Minnesota Wild. This guy's averaging 3.4 fantasy points a game right now. Just a guy that you don't necessarily think of, I think, when you think of like ridiculous point totals or high scoring offensive players. But here's what his game log looks like going back over the last five or six average fantasy points. So we have 3.5, 2.5, 2.4, 5.7, and 5.3. So typically he's really, really consistent. Every now and then you get a game that dips below a full point in there, but I feel like you kind of get that with any player anyways. So definitely a player I look out to draft every year.
Wow, did not realize his numbers were that high. Holy hell.
All right, so I've got a good one, and this one depends how big your league is. He might be on waivers. I got him on waivers about a week ago, and I haven't dropped him yet because he's still been producing. But I want to talk about Kyle Palmieri for the New York Islanders real quick. He's only played 5 games so far, and he's got 2 goals, 3 assists. But really, where he's like racking up just steady points is elsewhere. I love guys that are consistently shooting the puck, hitting guys, and blocking shots. I don't know how everybody's leagues work, but typically those three, you're going to get some percentage of a point for that. And so he's doing those things every night. And so when he does score a goal or have an assist or two, it's just like gravy on top of that. And that's going to be a common theme for everybody that I'm going to talk about today. And he's actually, of the 3 guys I'm going to mention on this episode here, he's the only forward. I'm big on picking up D that are always blocking shots, hitting guys, and shooting the puck because then like I said, they get a goal every now and then, and it's just gravy.
And a lot of those guys get points for lugging like, 18 to 22 minutes a night too. You can rack up a lot of points that way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the more you're on the ice, you're bound to step in front of a shot or lay the body.
Mine is going to be a guy who I actually just picked up on the waiver wire today. So maybe you'll get lucky enough. We're in a 16-man league, so I think that's as high as you can go. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it goes higher. Joel Farabee of the Philadelphia Flyers been looking pretty good so far. 3 goals through 6 games. He's basically scored in every other game to date. Based on ESPN's fantasy hockey rankings, he is currently the 28th ranked forward in fantasy, which honestly on the waiver wire is a pretty good pickup if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely a guy that's going to get a majority of those chances for the Flyers, you feel like, this season.
Yeah, he's going to get plenty of ice time with the big boys. He's looked good so far. Good player.
Yeah. My next one is going to be Logan O'Connor, a guy we actually just talked about on our most recent podcast episode, but a guy that's only rostered in 5.7 of leagues out there right now. And this is another guy sort of similar to Eriksson Ek, who just, I know he's had a hot start, but typically lugs you pretty consistent minutes. He's typically around that 1.8 to 2.2 average for fantasy points. Going through his game log again, I'm taking out the most recent game against the Islanders because he had like 5 minutes less ice time than he did in any other contest this season. But aside from that, 4.2, 2.8, 2.6, and then there's a couple 0.7s and 0.3s in there. But really, his ice time ramps up. We talked about this guy shorthanded scoring. We've talked about this guy basically getting to play top six if someone gets hurt. So I think this is absolutely a player that you can scoop off the waiver wire if you need a win that week.
Love it. Love it. All right. Next guy. This is a guy I picked up today as well. He's only rostered in 4% of the leagues, according to ESPN. Talking about Jake Middleton, defenseman for the Minnesota Wild. This is a guy who was not on my radar whatsoever, but I'll tell you what, he's got 0 goals, but it doesn't matter because he's managing to average 2.3 points a night through 6 games. And that's like exactly textbook what I love looking for on the waiver wire. People always want to go with a flashy guy that they think is randomly going to score a goal the night they pick him up. I mean, you might get lucky, but that's not, in my opinion, a great way to like kind of go dumpster diving on the waiver wire, as I like to call it. But I rather pick up a guy like this, a little bit of an under radar defenseman. He plays a ton of ice time every single night. I think his lowest so far was the opening night. He only played like 17 and a half minutes, but since then he's played at least 18 every single night. And one night he played 22. So he's also got 5 assists. Just what, 2 nights ago against Edmonton, he had 3 helpers, ended up having 4.6 fantasy points. So that's a pretty good night for kind of a no name defenseman.
Yeah, for sure. My next guy might be available, kind of a not as well known name. If you're in a small league with some casuals, but I doubt that he's available at this point because he's been tearing it up. And Mr. Morgan Miller, if you're watching this, I know why you have this guy. Mr. Trevor Moore of the LA Kings has been on an absolute tear to start the season. He has 5 goals through 6 games played. He's looked incredible for the Kings. Guy that, doesn't get talked about when you talk about LA. So that's why I'm saying if you're in a smaller league with some guys who maybe aren't, as much of hockey hardos as we are, maybe you can find him on the waiver wire. He's going to be a stud for you. 11th ranked forward in fantasy right now. Pretty insane.
Probably a guy that you could get in a trade too without breaking the bank if you play your cards right. My last guy is going to be TJ Brody. Again, only rostered in about 5% of leagues. This guy's ice time started off around 18 minutes at the beginning of the season, and it's already up to around 21, 22. So you're going to rack up a lot of points that way. Going back through his game log here, 1.5, 2.3, 2.5, 3.9, and then 1.8. So pretty consistent across the board. Rounds out to an average of about 2.2 to 2.5 per game. I think with the fact that his ice time is only going up, you're seeing a ton of shots on goal come from this guy now, which you didn't really see before. I feel like it's working for him in Toronto. So, yeah, TJ Brody, my third pick.
All right, this is a really interesting one. I might get flamed for this because this guy has 0 goals and 0 assists, but I'm about to sell you why he should be on your roster right now. And I think there's a high chance he's probably available and on the waiver wire too. Talking about my main man, Marty Farivari for the Capitals. This is a guy who, mark my words, will be up there in leading the league in hits by the end of the season. He lays the body constantly. And most leagues, you get at least, percentage of a point for a hit. That really racks up with a guy like Marty. Again, he has no goals and no assists, but yet he's managed to score at least 1.2 fantasy points every single night. One night he even had 2.7 fantasy points. And again, that's without scoring any goals or having any assists. And that's partially because the Capitals have not been scoring many goals. And not a lot of their players really have that many points right now. And that's eventually going to turn around a bit. He plays a lot of ice time. He's usually on their top pairing, if not number 2. He plays power play minutes sometimes as well. So he's going to get his fair share of points, which is exactly why if he's already putting up these kind of numbers, again, steady Eddie, that's the name of the game on defense. If he's already putting up just steady points every single night without having any actual like goals or assists, to me, that's a guy like, yep, go ahead and pick him up because then as soon as he does score, have an assist, it's going to be even better.
My last guy is going to be a guy out in the desert. We got Mr. Sean Dursey of the Arizona Coyotes. Might be available, 50-50 chance, not really sure. It says percent roster is not that high, so maybe you'll get lucky. As a defenseman, 2 goals through 6 games. Obviously, that's great. Averaging 23 minutes a night on the ice. Mac was just saying he likes picking up the defenseman on the waiver wire. It's, a little bit of icing on the cake if they can get you some goals. I think Dursey's been a great addition to the Coyotes so far this season. It's early, but the Yotes look like they can be dangerous, and I think Dursey's going to be a big part of that. So if he's available, I would definitely scoop him.
That's a great pick.
Yeah, I got to go off the board a little bit. Also doesn't hurt. Mac and I were watching a Ducks Yotes game over the weekend, and you were talking about Dursey.
He looked good. I thought he looked good.
That was a good pickup for them.
It was.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hopefully y'all enjoyed this little fantasy segment. Appreciate y'all listening. Go check out our podcast, Empty Betters. It's available on Spotify, iTunes, and all other major podcast platforms. Give us a follow on social media as well. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it.